Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Becky and today I'm going to be talking to you about my personal experience of antidepressants. I think the first thing to start off with is, what are antidepressants? I'm sure you probably know this, so excuse me for going over it, but I just want to try to cover everything as well as possible. So, according to the website for the charity Mind, antidepressants are psychiatric drugs which are licensed to treat depression, and some are also licensed to treat other conditions such as anxiety disorders, phobias, eating disorders, and physical conditions, including managing long-term pain. Who can prescribe antidepressants? Bearing in mind, this is just in the UK that we're given this perspective from, as I'm British. So, the healthcare professionals who can prescribe antidepressants are a GP, a psychiatrist, a specialist nurse prescriber, and a specialist pharmacist. Antidepressants don't stop you completely from feeling depression. They're more mood stabilizers, so that whilst you're going through mental health difficulties, especially depression, it's more to level you out rather than make you happy, which is a common misconception. You may have heard of that yourself. So, my experience of depression, I've spoken a bit about this before, but in case you haven't seen that video, let me refresh your memory or introduce you to it for the first time. So I first realized I was depressed when I was about 16, 17, I'd say. Probably closer to 16. And it was when I was doing A-level psychology, in particular, that I felt to myself that, oh, this is what depression is. I'm pretty sure I have most, if not all, of those symptoms. Working out when exactly it started is harder because it's one of those things I didn't know I had it. My parents certainly would never have acknowledged if I had it. And how to put this? But, looking back, there's some things like I had IBS in my teens as well. So I'm pretty sure that was closely linked to the depression. And so when I was doing A-level psychology, I knew I would need antidepressants, definitely, and even more definitely is that I would need counselling. If you're interested, I will do a video on my experience of counselling another time. And just let me know in the comments below. Oh, yeah. Just in case this isn't already obvious, but I feel I should say that this is just talking about my own experience. This is not in any way medical or psychiatric advice. If you suspect you have depression, you can search up online the symptoms of depression. And then I would say your first port of call is to talk to your primary care physician. In the UK, call this a GP, and they will take it from there. So, I didn't get on antidepressants until I went to uni. Because, as I said, my parents would not have acknowledged that I had depression, let alone let me have medication for it. So that was about, I think I was 20. So I'd been in Bristol for about a year, or at least like a full academic year. And I had a relationship breakdown, and it just made everything way worse. The depressive symptoms I'd been struggling with anyway, or just like sort of brewing under the surface, it really came to a head then. And it was actually in December as well that I made the decision that now is a time to get you know, doctor's advice and see about getting on antidepressants. So yeah, that means I was dumped before Christmas, which is always great. So the symptoms that I had that specifically made me realize I needed to see a professional. So I had the usual symptoms that they ask you about. They get you to fill out this form, and it says like, have you had these feelings? And you know, they list it, and then they say, if you had these for more than 2 weeks, then consistently, or at least like most of 2 weeks, then you likely have depression. So I had persistent low mood. I was very tearful, and sometimes just feeling tearful, or like maybe 1 or 2 tears, but most of the time it was just outright sobbing. I had very bad insomnia. My insomnia had gotten worse. I've had insomnia throughout my childhood, but it was way worse at this. After the relationship breakdown, I think I stayed awake for definitely more than 24 hours. So somewhere between like 24 and 36 hours I stayed awake, and I was crying almost the whole time. Feeling hopeless and helpless, and a lack of energy. So my first antidepressant was mirtazapine. This is because the primary reason I had mirtazapine was because of the insomnia, and I'd also had quite a bit of weight loss and lack of appetite, and the weight loss was unintentional. If you've suffered any type of just even intense sadness, whether it's like grief from the death of a loved one, if it's even just stress related, or you have depression yourself, or even a breakup, you've heard of that, especially with a breakup, they call it the heartbreak diet. Please don't think I'm trivializing that. That's just what I've heard it called. So some people, when they're down, depressed, they can't eat, where some people have the opposite reaction and eat more than normal. So the mirtazapine was going to address those two key things, as well as the depression itself. So mirtazapine takes 4 to 6 weeks to work, but you should feel better after 1 to 2 weeks. From my research as well, I did this all like, you know, A-level psychology, and then I did a psychology degree, but I always read stuff about depression, and I wanted to refresh my memory before doing this video. Most of the medication that I took, it says that, you know, it can take about 4 to 6 weeks to start to work, but you can start to feel better sooner, so that's always a bonus. Mirtazapine is what's called a tetracyclic antidepressant. I'll put some links below if there's anything you want to read up more about, or if you feel maybe I don't explain it as well as I should. So mirtazapine restores the balance of neurotransmitters. And it's to be taken at night because it does make you very drowsy. It also increases your appetite, which is, like I said, what I really wanted it for. So if you hear some pages turning, it's because I wrote some notes to make sure that I'm as coherent as possible. Let's see. So yeah, the main reason I came off the citalopram is for the mirtazapine is for the same reasons that I went on it, that I'd put on enough weight and I didn't want to put on too much, and it was making me way too sleepy. Like I was sleeping more than 8 hours. I think I was sleeping like 12 hours a day, and when you're trying to go to university and you're trying to hold down a job, it's not ideal. So my GP was happy to changed them. Like mirtazapine and tetracyclines are not ones that a lot of GPs are give out more than anything. The primary ones are SSRIs, which is what my next one is. So SSRIs are, that stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. It basically increases the serotonin in your brain, and serotonin is what is commonly known as the happy hormone or happy neurotransmitter. As you can see, just from the names that are given, you can see why people like to prescribe SSRIs. As they are like a newer generation of antidepressants as well, they tend to have fewer side effects compared to older medications. So, with citalopram, again, it says that it takes 4 to 6 weeks to work, but you can start to feel better at 1 to 2 weeks. There are a number of side effects with all medication, and the side effects that you get are quite common with most types of antidepressants too. I can also put up a link of common side effects if that's something you want to see. But you look up any of the antidepressants or even just antidepressants in general and it will tell you online. So some of the ones that I particularly noticed with citalopram was, and actually with most of my antidepressants, is dry mouth, excess sweating, and feeling a bit weak / shaky. So by excess sweating, what I mean is that I didn't used to really sweat that much at night, except for maybe in the summer when it was like exceptionally hot, or when I was ill, say with the flu, and you sweat more because you're unwell. But I was sweating buckets on citalopram, especially on nights out, but I digress. So I came off citalopram primarily, and in my opinion, unfortunately, because one of my psychology lecturers told me this is the reason that I was having regular sleep paralysis. So sleep paralysis is a sleep disturbance where your brain goes between, is sort of, maybe not stuck, but sort of stuck between sleepful and wakefulness, where your dreams and real life are crossing over. So you can open your eyes, but your body doesn't move because your brain is sort of thinking you're asleep. And your brain to a degree keeps you still so you don't act out your dreams. And with sleep paralysis, you can sometimes see what people call shadow figures, or you'll see like your pile of clothes on the chair, and in this state it looks like a demon or something. And I don't think I had that much, but I did have the feeling of something or someone sitting on my chest, and my chest felt very tight and compressed, which was scary until I knew what it was. And then when I knew what it was, I was lucky in that while I would have the sleep paralysis, I would say, oh, it's just sleep paralysis. This is nothing to worry about. And being able to talk myself out of the fear was a good way of stopping it, or at least reducing the fear. So unfortunately, I listened to this lecturer and I came off citalopram. I was on quite a high dose as well, which is why I had the sleep paralysis. As far as I'm aware, you don't get it on a lower dose. And the reason I say it's unfortunate is because in hindsight, I feel like I did the best on citalopram. And then also the one that came after, sertraline, was pretty good too. But yeah, I was really mostly just thriving on citalopram. I was definitely, a bit depressed sometimes because, like I said, it's a mood stabilizer. It doesn't make you happy. But it enabled me to come out of my shell. I was painfully socially anxious. I didn't know that I had social anxiety because fortunately we didn't cover that in A level. I just thought I was really shy, but apparently it's social anxiety. So, back to citalopram. No, that was all my notes said. Yeah, so I shouldn't have come off it. But anyway, the next one I tried is also an SSRI. Again, it takes 4 to 6 weeks to work. This is sertraline. So sertraline is just like citalopram, given for low mood and panic attacks. Sertraline is also given sometimes for OCD and PTSD. I have something called CPTSD or complex PTSD, which is different to the main type of PTSD that you've heard of. I'm not sure I wanted to go into why I have that or what causes that or what the difference is, but you can look it up if you like. And I went to 100 milligrams on sertraline, which is again quite a high dose because so all these the first 3 medications, this is over several years that I was on these, maybe 5 or 6 years. And, I was worked up slowly into higher doses under the care of my GP. And I was having counselling not that regularly, to be honest, because I was only having free counselling at uni, which was only 6 sessions at a time. And then you have to stop and then go back on the waiting list if you decide that you need more. Again, sertraline has less side effects than other or older antidepressants. It has all the common side effects like nausea, headaches, insomnia. And these are meant to stop after a couple of weeks. And it wasn't until I spoke to somebody else who had been on sertraline at a high dose, and she said that sertraline really causes the excess sweating. I thought it was bad on citalopram. It was worse on sertraline. And it did not stop after a couple of weeks. So unfortunately, as well, I didn't realise that some of these side effects were meant to be temporary, maybe only last 1 or 2 weeks. I had some of them for the entire time I was on them, and I don't know if I didn't think anything of it or my GPs just weren't that bothered. Unfortunately, being in uni, I was passed around from a lot of different GPs. It was hard to pin down a specific one, and nobody actually told me that it's very important when you have mental health issues that you need to be seen regularly for, that it's important to ask specifically for the same GP where possible. So, yeah, in hindsight as well, I probably should have stayed on sertraline, especially because the excess sweating didn't stop, which could be either because of other antidepressants, now because of painkillers that I take for fibromyalgia, or maybe it's some sort of permanent change to my body. I'm not really sure. But it is what it is. I was weaned off of sertraline, lowered gradually at a safe level that I agreed with my GP. And I remember with sertraline, the dry mouth was way worse than with citalopram, and that was the first time I found out there's such thing as moisturizing mouthwashes. And I still use it to this day because, like I said, I have 2 different pain meds now that give me dry mouth as well, so yay. Interestingly, on sertraline, I didn't see it for the other antidepressants, but on sertraline they tell you not to drink grapefruit juice because it increases the amount of sertraline in the body. I have no idea how that works, but apparently that's how it works. So after sertraline, I had Prozac. Then I went back on citalopram because I thought, citalopram works so well for me in the past, let's go back on that. But it didn't help. I felt I was just as severely depressed as I had been for years. And I was desperate for relief. And like I said, citalopram was the first drug that I was on where I was like, oh, this is helping me the most. But unfortunately, going back on both citalopram and then sertraline did not seem to work the same way it had the first time round. Unfortunately, I have no idea why. I'm not sure anyone knows why you go back on some drugs and they might not work the same way again. Maybe that's another story for another time. So then after that, I asked my GP to refer me to someone else who could help me with what antidepressant I should be on, someone, more of a specialist. Now, here in the UK, it's difficult to see an actual psychiatrist. And I think going private at the time, I don't know now, but at the time it was like £300 to see a psychiatrist. And I was like, as a poor student, that was definitely outside of my means. So I can't remember who I spoke to. It was some sort of mental health charity or something. I'll find the name and add that below. But they said basically your options are one called duloxetine or venlafaxine. And they said if these don't work, no antidepressant is going to work for me, because after you've been on 2 or more and they don't work, you have what is known as treatment-resistant depression. I can only speak for the UK, but they are hesitant to use other forms of treatment like electroshock therapy, for example. They still do electroshock therapy, just nowhere near as frequently as before, because obviously there was a lot of problems with that before. And, you can read further about that if you like. So that was very crushing to hear. I feel as someone with depression and anxiety, you don't want to be told that your depression is treatment resistant, even though it just means that you've had 2 or more medications that haven't, I don't want to say fixed it, because, like I said, they don't fix the problem, but without much success. Your brain just hears treatment resistant. You're like, okay, well, I'm never going to get better then. And it can make things worse. So after considering, at this point, I was dating Tom as well. So we talked over the options that they had given me, and we chose, or I guess I chose with some input from Tom, that I was going to try venlafaxine. In hindsight, I regret, in a way, taking venlafaxine, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But first, what I will tell you is, unlike the other medications, Effexor, which is a brand name for venlafaxine, is an SNRI, which is a serotonin noradrenaline reuptake inhibitor. So not only does it increase serotonin, it increases noradrenaline in the brain. I also had that up to quite a high dose. I want to say I was on about 150 milligrams. I wish I had access to my medical notes, like from the doctor, so I could see exactly when I was on what and at what dose, but we make do with what we got. So, Effexor, I'm going to call it Effexor because the venlafaxine is a bit of a mouthful. Effexor treats depression and anxiety and also panic attacks. Again, takes 4 to 6 weeks to work, but you should feel better within 1 to 2 weeks. Side effects that are meant to be temporary, and in my case, were not. Was feeling sick / nausea, headaches, excess sweating, and very dry mouth, fast or irregular heartbeat. Now, the heartbeat thing for me is also called arrhythmia. I didn't realise it was the Effexor that was causing that, and it was very infrequent, so I figured it was nothing really to worry about. So I didn't really worry. Side effects that I didn't know was being caused by the Effexor until I came off it was worsening my insomnia. But I mean, I guess to a degree, I should have realised that it could be. No, wait, I knew while I was on the Effexor that that was what was probably worsening my insomnia. Um, Weight gain was a big one. I think between the Effexor and then the fibromyalgia medication for fibromyalgia, that's why I gained so much weight. I only came off Effexor 3 years ago. So I was on it for a really long time. I think at least 5 years. This was like the one medication that I was on the longest, because I was just worried about what I had been told before, which is that, if this doesn't work, then I might as well try no antidepressants and see how I cope. The biggest side effect that I didn't realize was brain fog. Now, I thought the brain fog I had was caused by either the fibromyalgia itself or the medication for fibromyalgia, being amitriptyline or pregabalin. And it wasn't until I was off the Effexor for a year that I realised that had been the cause of my brain fog, because it cleared up. My brain fog was so bad. Sometimes I could barely get through a sentence without, spacing out or losing my trail of thought. I have that occasionally now, but that's ADHD. And it's nowhere near as bad. And I also did not realise it was causing memory loss. It was also not only just like memory loss. I guess I don't know how different memory loss is to memory suppression, but after a year of being on it, all these memories that I had suppressed had come out, and that caused all sorts of problems, especially in my relationship. Yeah, I knew it was making me emotionally very numb. I wasn't that sad. I wasn't like extremely sad, but I also felt that I wasn't really happy either, but I was okay with that because I'd been so severely depressed for so long that feeling nothing was better than the alternative. In my experience of antidepressants and depression, it was just better to feel nothing for a while. There's some long-term side effects as well that have been noted in people that have come off Effexor, and I did notice this myself. Excuse for slight TMI, but that is loss of libido, which is your sex drive, if you don't know. And for women, there's not a whole lot of help you can get for that, but I'm not sure this is the right time and place to go into that. But yeah, so it's a great drug, as you can see. I mean, if you're down for some numbing, and I think the numbing was because it was at a high dose, and a lot of the bad symptoms like the memory loss and the brain fog was because I was on such a high dose of it. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend this to anyone. You can get some very severe withdrawals from stopping Effexor. This is even, I don't mean just like coming off it without medical supervision. I mean coming off it with like the slow weaning off. So the severe withdrawals that you can get are severe nausea, vertigo, irritability, motor coordination problems, dysphoria, which is a profound sense of dissatisfaction or unease with life, not the same as depression, hypomania, muscle twitches, intense nightmares or vivid dreams, sensory disturbances, which is shock-like electrical sensations, which I had in my brain. You can also get that just coming off antidepressants in general. It's called brain zaps. They are temporary, but if you don't know that that's what it is, like I didn't, you can panic. But it's definitely nothing to worry about in my experience. But it's, hard sometimes to tell yourself not to worry. So that I've been off antidepressants for depression, specifically for 3 years, but I'm taking nortriptyline now instead of amitriptyline for fibromyalgia, and that's technically also, as well as a muscle relaxant, is also an antidepressant. So I'm sure that's probably helping me to stay stable. I think one of the biggest things that affected my depression and relieved a lot of it is long-term counselling, which I had privately because, like I said, on the NHS you can't get that much. My first experience of long-term counselling was with a company called, might be a charity rather, called Kinergy, based in Bristol. I was with them for 18 months. Very helpful, but unfortunately, the depression got very bad again and I had to seek elsewhere. Then I went to Avon. It was called something like Avon Psychiatry and something. I don't know. Psychotherapy. There is a difference between psychotherapy and counselling. You can look that up if you want to know what the difference is, because I can't remember off the top of my head. And the lady I spoke to there was so helpful. She made a very big impact on my relationship stuff to do with my family, especially my relationship with my mum. She made me realise that there was a very good chance that some stuff in my childhood my mum was aware of and was choosing to ignore it to make her own life easier. And I got to say, knowing that, or being told that, there was a very good chance that she knew and did nothing, was a huge weight off my shoulders. It made me realise that there was nothing I could have done really to change our relationship if my mum was unwilling to look at certain things and take accountability for certain things. And then the counsellor I have now, I've been with, it's definitely more than 4 years, because it was before Tom and I got engaged. But yeah, so he's been really great too, and I've been with him for most of the time, well, the whole time I've been off antidepressants as well. I still have sessions with him now once a month, and at one point I was having counselling twice a week. So to go to once a week, I've come very far, and as well as not being on antidepressants primarily for depression. So I've come on leaps and bounds, so that's great. So overall, I would say that antidepressants are very helpful, to the point they can be life-saving if you're like me and you struggled with suicidal thoughts, also known as suicidal ideation, where you think about suicide but you don't plan to take your own life or attempt it. It can be very helpful for that. They don't stop you from, having the suicidal thoughts, but it does make it easier to manage sometimes, especially if you have it combined with therapy. It didn't stop me from attempting to take my own life at least once. That's a story for another time. But I know suicide is very controversial to talk about, but sometimes you feel that you are better off if you weren't in the world. You feel that, life is so hard. For over 10 years, my depression was rated as extremely high. Not moderate, not mild, but extremely high. You go through that for a long time, and then you add in later chronic pain. There's some very dark times there, but I am on the other side of that now, so of course that is nothing but great. Antidepressants are not for everyone, just like therapy is not for everyone, but I would always encourage people who have any mental health issue, whether it's depression or something else, to at least consider medication. Even if it's not as severe as mine was, it doesn't have to be. And, it's not going to fix everything completely, like I said. It works best in tandem with therapy of some kind, whether that's CBT or talking therapy, like what I had. And etc. Those are the types. And just like with counselling, you shouldn't be afraid to speak up and say, this is not working for me. Can I try something else? Or can I take a break? And that's saying that to, your whoever is providing you with the medication or counselling, whether it's, GP or someone more specialist than that. If you would like to share your own experiences of depression, any mental health, anything, you can comment below. If it's not something you feel comfortable sharing publicly, you can inbox me on Instagram. I might be a tad slow to notice that the stuff if it doesn't come to my main folder, my requests, but I will always do my best to read and reply. If you need any advice, or if you need to know where to go to for advice, you can always message me too. I'm more than happy to help. Beyond that, I hope this was okay. I know it's kind of odd to put this alongside a makeup video, but I just thought I'd try something new. And if I don't do a new video before then and speak to you soon, then have a very good Christmas or winter period, whatever you're doing, whatever you're celebrating. And hopefully I won't be away too long, but if I'm not back, then I also have a good new year. That's all for now. Talk to you later. Bye.
So high, I'm hypnotized.